They say the Great War ended in 1918, but in certain fields of France it never did. Soldiers report phantom barrages in the dead of night, artillery shells screaming overhead, guns thundering though no crews remain. Some believe it's the souls of the fallen, cursed to fight forever. Tonight we uncover the truth of the phantom guns that never fell silent. But before we step onto that haunted battlefield, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and give this video a like. We bring you terrifying stories of war, horror, and the supernatural every evening, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, our story begins on a cold night in the winter of 1918. The war was said to be over. The guns had fallen silent, or so the world believed. But for Captain Edmund Hale and his patrol, silence was just the beginning of another nightmare. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky over the old French front was still swollen with clouds. Captain Edmund Hale stood outside the makeshift command dugout, his boots sinking in the mud, staring into the darkness of no man's land. The silence was wrong. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, heavy, expectant, like the pause between heartbeats. World War I had been over for weeks. The armistice was signed. The armies were withdrawing, and for the first time in years, men dared to hope the guns would never sound again. And yet, somewhere out there in the fields, the thunder came. It started faint, like a memory pressing at the ear. A low rumble rolled across the plains, and then it grew sharper, deeper, unmistakable. The scream of artillery shells arced across the night sky, invisible but terrifyingly real in sound. Then came the blasts. Explosions boomed in the distance, the kind Hale had heard 1,000 times before. The earth trembled beneath his feet, as though a fresh bombardment was underway. But the official reports said otherwise. No units were firing. The war was over. No guns had been fired in days. Hale's hand tightened on the railing of the dugout steps. For a moment he thought he could smell the acrid tang of cordite drifting faintly on the damp air. His mind wanted to dismiss it as a trick, echoes from past shellings, perhaps thunder mistaken for guns. But he had lived too long on the front to mistake thunder for artillery. "Captain," a voice called behind him. Sergeant Thomas Carow emerged, trench coat collar pulled high, helmet tipped low. A cigarette smoldered between his fingers, its glow briefly illuminating the scar along his jaw. "You hear it too?" Hale turned, his expression grave. "Yes, I hear it." Carow spat into the mud. "Bloody nonsense, sir. Armistice signed, Germans pulled back, and still the bastards shell us from beyond the grave." His words carried bravado, but his eyes flicked nervously toward the horizon. Behind him came another figure, slighter, his uniform patched with French insignia. Private Henri Duval, their assigned scout and liaison. Unlike Carow, he didn't try to hide his fear. His eyes were wide, fixed on the empty fields where the sound rolled. "They say it happens," Henri whispered in accented English. "Even after the ceasefire, the villagers talk of nights when the cannons return. No men, no guns, only the noise. They call it les canons fantômes." "The phantom guns," Hale translated softly. Another blast rumbled. For a moment Hale could swear he saw a flash on the horizon, a flicker of light, like the mouth of a cannon spitting fire. He blinked, but the horizon remained black. An officer's voice barked from inside the dugout. Lieutenant Farrow, the adjutant, poked his head out. "Captain Hale, orders from Sector Command. You stir to take a small detachment forward. Confirm what set's causing this." Carow groaned, dropping his cigarette into the muck. "Figures. Send the poor sods into no man's sit's land to chase thunder." Hale squared his shoulders. "Very well. Get your kit, Sergeant. Private Duval, you still guide us." Minutes later, the three men moved out, lanterns shuttered, rifles slung. The night pressed in around them like a suffocating blanket. Every step squelched in mud. Every breath formed a pale mist in the freezing air. The war might have been declared finished, but the land said otherwise. The land was still broken, cratered, dead. The phantom barrage continued. Sometimes it seemed close, pounding just over the next rise. Sometimes it drifted far away, echoing like the memory of a battle long past. Once Hale flinched as the scream of a shell tore overhead, only to vanish into nothing. No explosion followed. They crept into a ruined trench, its duckboards rotting, the stench of old death clinging to the air. Shattered helmets and rifles lay half-buried in the muck, relics of the final offensives. Caro muttered curses under his breath as he brushed aside the skeleton of a rat. Henry's eyes flicked to every shadow. Hale felt the past pressing down on him, heavy and merciless. Then the earth shook. A deafening blast thundered across the trench line. The three men ducked instinctively, throwing themselves against the wall. Dirt cascaded down. Timbers creaked. The air filled with dust and smoke. But when the echoes faded, nothing. No crater, no shell, just the tremor of impact, as if the world itself had pretended to be struck. Caro Sepp's face was pale beneath the grime. Christ Almighty, it's Sepp's real. I felt it. Hale's heart hammered in his chest. He forced himself to climb the trench ladder, to peer into the battlefield beyond. The moon broke briefly through the clouds, casting a sickly silver light across the scarred plain. Craters stretched as far as the eye could see, black pools of stagnant water gleaming like eyes. And in the nearest crater, steam. It rose faintly, curling in the moonlight. The mud bubbled as though freshly churned. Hale's stomach tightened. He knew that look. He'd seen it after barrages, when a shell landed moments before. But there were no guns, no artillery, no enemy. Only the land, smoking and restless, as if it had been struck by something impossible. Hale turned back to his men, voice low, steady but threaded with unease. We go on. The patrol approaches the smoking crater, only to find it still radiating heat, though no shell had been fired that night. The crater hissed softly, steam coiling into the night like the breath of something alive beneath the earth. Captain Hale crouched at its edge, gloved hand hovering over the churned mud. Warm. The soil was warm. Impossible. He drew his hand back quickly, as though burned. No ordnance, he muttered. No debris. Nothing. Caro spat into the dirt. Then, what in God's Sip's name makes it smoke like that? Duval stared into the crater, his face pale, lips trembling. It is not what, he whispered. It is who. The words unsettled Hale more than he wanted to admit. He straightened, forcing his tone into the clipped calm of command. We move. Sector Command wants confirmation, and confirmation we shall get. Keep your eyes sharp, your mouths shut, and follow me. The three men pressed onward into no man's land. The clouds had thickened again, choking off the moonlight. The battlefield stretched ahead like a graveyard. The skeleton of war laid bare. Barbed wire sagged in tangles slick with dew. Shell holes gaped like open wounds. Shattered trees reached upward with blackened limbs, claws frozen against the night sky. Everywhere, silence. It wasn't the natural quiet of countryside after rain. This silence was suffocating. A vacuum that swallowed sound. Even their own footsteps seemed muted, as if the land itself were unwilling to acknowledge them. The more they walked, the heavier it pressed on their ears, until Hale felt he might go mad from the absence of life. Caro noticed it too, he muttered as they walked. If only to break the weight. Odd in it should be frogs croaking, owls calling. Not a bloody thing out here. No animals come here, Duval said. His voice was flat, resigned, like a man repeating a truth he'd learned long ago. Not since the first bombardment. My village was over that ridge. He pointed to the black horizon. We heard the guns for days. When it ended, nothing moved in these fields, not even the crows. Hale glanced at him. And you stayed. I had nowhere else to go. The young Frenchman Sips's jaw clenched. My brother, he never came back from the lines. I believe he lies somewhere here. That is why I take these patrols. Caro grunted, braver than most. But there was no warmth in his tone, just exhaustion. The phantom barrage rumbled again, far off this time, as if the dead guns were moving across the land. Hale halted, raising a hand. His ears strained, There it was, faint, almost imperceptible beneath the rolling thunder, the cadence of boots. Marching, he felt his breath catch. "Hold," he whispered. The three of them crouched low in the ruins of an old trench, ears pricked. The sound grew clearer. Dozens, maybe hundreds of boots, in perfect rhythm. Tramp, 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 coming nearer. Karosip's eyes widened. He raised his rifle barrel, trembling. "Tell me you hear that, sir. Please bloody tell me you hear that." Hale Sip's lips were dry. "I hear it." Duval clutched at his rosary beads beneath his tunic, lips moving in silent prayer. The sound swelled, surrounding them, pressing closer. Hale expected at any moment to see ranks of soldiers crest the ridge. Germans, British, French. He didn't care. He was ready to face them. But when the mist shifted and the horizon revealed itself, there was nothing. Only empty land, cratered and broken, silvered faintly by moonlight. And yet the marching continued. Invisible battalions, advancing, retreating, shifting through the night like an army of ghosts. The air vibrated with their rhythm. Hale's heart thudded in time, each beat echoing the phantom step. Caro swore and lowered his rifle, his voice trembling with anger more than fear. "I don't sit like it. I don't sit bloody like it one bit. If they sit out there, why don't sit we see them? If they sit or not, then who sits making the sound?" Hale forced his composure, though dread knotted in his gut. "Stay focused. Keep moving." They pressed on, deeper into the wasteland. Every shattered stump looked like a figure. Every shadow seemed to shift. The land itself was watching them. Hale tried to shake it, but the feeling grew stronger with each step. He had walked these fields during the war, ordered men across this very ground into the maelstrom. He had thought it dead now, safe, but it was not safe. It was waiting. Duval's whisper broke the silence. "They say the land remembers." Hale glanced back. "What do you mean?" "My grandmother told me before the war, blood feeds the earth, and the earth never forgets. Where men fall in great numbers, the ground drinks their pain. It can never be quiet again." His eyes gleamed in the lantern's shuttered light. "Here the guns will never stop." Another phantom blast shook the ground. A shock wave rolled across them. Caro cursed and ducked. Hale steadied himself, every muscle taut. But again, no shell, no crater, only trembling earth, and silence following in its wake. The silence now was worse, deeper, more absolute. Hale realized, with a crawling chill, that the marching had stopped. For the first time since they'd left, the phantom soldiers had fallen silent. The three men froze, listening, their ears straining in the vacuum. And then, a voice, whispering, faint, carried on the wind, a language Hale didn't recognize. Then another, overlapping, and another, dozens of whispers, layering, rising, forming a chorus of the dead. Duval's face was white as bone. "They know we are here." The whispers swell, as if hundreds of unseen soldiers surround the patrol, but the battlefield remains utterly empty. The whispers faded into the mist, leaving only the patrol's ragged breathing. Hale raised a hand, signaling silence. Every instinct in him screamed to retreat, to call the mission done, but command had ordered answers, and a soldier did not turn back without them. Then it came, the shriek of incoming artillery. It split the night like a banshee's cry, piercing marrow and bone. Hale's head snapped upward, heart hammering. A shell. He knew that sound too well, tearing down from the heavens. "Down!" Hale roared. The three men threw themselves into a crater. The ground erupted in a roar that shook their teeth, dirt showering over them. But when Hale raised his head, gasping, there was no blast crater, no shrapnel, no smoke. The earth around them was untouched. Karos's face glistened with sweat. "It was right bloody on top of us." Another scream, another shell, this one closer. They dove again, clutching helmets, waiting for the death they could not avoid. A boom split the night, the shockwave tearing through Hale's chest. And again, nothing. No crater, no debris, only trembling ground and ringing ears. The phantom barrage had begun. Hale struggled to steady his breath. The air itself seemed charged, every breath tasting of hot metal and cordite. He forced his mind to logic, to routine. They sit, not real shells. Hold steady, they can sit harm us. Caro shoved back his helmet, eyes wild. Tell that to my ears, sir. Tell that to my bloody ribs. Duval pointed, his hand shaking. Look. Across the wasteland, geysers of earth erupted, shell holes gouged themselves into the mud. Fresh and steaming, invisible explosions carved the land as though giant fists were pounding from below. The impossible barrage painted the battlefield with violence, yet no ordnance fell from the sky. God preserve us, Caro whispered. Smoke drifted on a windless night, acrid and thick. Within it, shapes flickered, silhouettes of men, uniforms shredded, limbs missing, a figure staggered into view, head half gone, body glowing faintly as if lit from within. He reached toward them, lips moving, though no sound came. Then, like smoke, he vanished. Duval clutched his rosary tighter. Les Morts, they walk with the guns. The phantom shells howled again, this time closer, rattling their bones. Hale dragged them forward through the trench, mud sucking at their boots. Every few yards the world convulsed with invisible impacts, the ground bursting under unseen fire. Caro stumbled, crying out. Hale turned. The sergeant clutched his arm. Blood ran down his sleeve, crimson against the mud. Hale froze. You star hit. Caro Sit's voice shook. But nothing touched me. Nothing. The fabric was shredded, as though torn by shrapnel, yet no metal lay around him. Hale's stomach turned cold. The phantom barrage could wound. They pushed deeper, desperation mounting. Each impact drove them to cover. Each scream overhead another chance for death. Hale's mind reeled. He had survived years of artillery, only to face its ghost now. Was this punishment? Retribution? At last, the barrage stilled. The echoes rolled away, fading into a silence even heavier than before. The battlefield lay still, cratered anew by explosions that had never been fired. Hale lifted his head, trembling with fatigue, ears still ringing. Report. Caro Sit's face was pale, arm slick with blood. Not deep, just a graze. But it sits real, sir. They can hurt us. Duval Sepp's eyes scanned the mist, wide and fearful. We are not meant to walk here. This is their ground now. Hale clenched his fists, fighting the dread curling in his chest. He had been an officer long enough to mask fear, but inside he felt it, the crushing weight of the past, refusing to stay buried. Then from the smoke, a voice, not a whisper this time, a bark, commanding, clipped, in German. Hale's blood ran cold. He recognized the tone, the voice of an artillery officer calling fire orders. The phantom guns were not random, they were directed. And then, in the drifting smoke, a shape appeared, a tall figure in a tattered German coat, cap shadowing his ruined face. The officer lifted his hand in salute, and though his jaw was torn, he spoke clearly, in English. Captain Hale. The ghostly German officer calls Hale by name, though he has never seen him before. The smoke thinned. Where the ghostly German officer had stood, only emptiness remained, yet the echo of his voice still pressed against Hale's skull. He had heard his name, clear as a bell, though no lips had truly formed the sound. Caro was pale, clutching his bleeding arm. Tell me you heard that too, sir. Tell me I said not losing my bloody mind. Halsip's jaw was clenched tight. I heard it. Duval crossed himself, whispering in French, then looked up, eyes glistening. The legends are true. I prayed they were only stories, but the war made them real. Hale turned sharply. What legends? The Frenchman hesitated, as though speaking them aloud would bind him to them forever. At last, in a low, urgent voice he began. They say when too many die in one place, the land refuses peace. My village elders told us the soil itself remembers the screams. When the guns fall silent, the earth calls them back, because it is not finished feeding. The soldiers rise, the cannons roar, and the battle plays forever, until the commanders answer for what they have done. Hale felt the words strike him like cold iron. Superstition, he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Duval shook his head. It is not only my people who know. The Germans spoke of it too. They called this place Der ewige Donner, the eternal thunder. They feared it. Caro gave a bitter laugh. Aye, and here we are, chasing fairy tales like fools in the dark. But his eyes betrayed the same fear gnawing at them all. Another rumble rolled across the plain. The men crouched instinctively, but this time it wasn't just sound. Shapes flickered in the mist, not vague silhouettes, but sharp, clear figures. An artillery crew. 5 men in German uniforms, their faces pale and ruinous, flesh torn, yet moving with perfect precision. They loaded an invisible shell into an invisible gun, ramming it home, adjusting the breech. One man shouted an order, his lips moving in silent command. Then together they heaved, and the ground shook as though a real cannon had fired. The phantoms worked in silence, but the battlefield answered with thunder. Caro Sip's hand shook on his rifle. Christ Almighty, they Sip working a gun that isn't Sip there. Duval Sip's voice was a whisper. The gun is there, just not for us. Hale couldn't move. He watched as the crew went through their drill again and again, precise, mechanical, eternal. Every detail of their motions was burned into his soldier's memory. The efficiency, the rhythm, the brutal familiarity. He had commanded such crews himself. And now here they were, working beyond death. Suddenly, one of the phantoms paused. His ruined face turned, empty eyes locked with Hale's across the wasteland. The officer's stomach lurched. For a moment he was certain the dead man saw him, truly saw him. Then, without sound, the ghostly soldier raised a hand in salute. The entire crew turned, as one, and vanished into smoke. The silence that followed was worse than the thunder. Caro sagged against the trench wall, muttering curses under his breath. Duval clutched his rosary until his knuckles turned white. Hal forced himself to breathe, to steady his voice. "We move," he said, though every nerve in his body screamed retreat. "We record everything we have seen. Command must know." Caro barked a hollow laugh. "And what shall you tell them, sir? That the bloody Jerrys rise from their graves to fire ghost guns. They still lock us in a ward back home." Hale ignored him, pressing on. His boots squelched in the mud, every step heavier than the last. The world felt thinner now. The line between the living and the dead stretched to breaking. He could no longer tell if the smoke curling in the trenches was mist or gunpowder, if the shadows were tricks of the eye or watching forms. Duval walked beside him, voice low, almost reverent. "The earth will not rest until the commanders pay. That is why it called your name." Hale froze mid-step. "What did you say?" Duval's gaze was steady. "The dead know you, Captain. They know all who gave the orders. You sent thousands into these fields. You must answer." The words cut deep, straight through Hale's composure. Memories surged, maps spread across tables, lines drawn, decisions made, his voice giving the order. Fire for effect. The earth had answered with fire, and villages had burned, men had died screaming. He forced the memories down. "Enough," he snapped. "We keep moving." But in the silence that followed, the phantom guns thundered again, as though mocking him. The phantom artillery crew disappears, but their final salute lingers in Hale's mind, and Duval warns that the guns won't rest until commanders like him answer for their sins. The mist thickened as they pressed forward, muffling sight and sound. Hale's lantern cast a narrow beam, the light devoured by fog only a few paces out. Every shape was suspect now. Every tree stump a watching figure, every broken post a soldier standing at attention. The guns spoke again. A shriek overhead, followed by a deafening crash somewhere beyond the ridge. Dirt rattled down on their helmets. Caro swore, clutching his rifle tighter. "Bloody hell, sir. How long we playing tag with ghosts? This isn't set recon. It's set suicide." Hale Thip's reply was clipped. "We push on. We need proof." but proof was already finding them. A second scream tore through the air, closer this time. The three men dove into a shell hole, mud splashing up to their knees. The explosion ripped the night apart, and this time, Caro cried out. Hale turned sharply. The sergeant clutched his side, staggering. His hand came away slick with blood. Medic kit. Hale barked, already dropping to his knees. He tore open Caro's tunic. Shrapnel wounds riddled his flesh, shallow but real, bleeding freely. Yet when Hale searched the mud around them, there was no metal, no fragments, nothing. Duvalst's face went pale. It is worse than we thought. The dead guns do not only sound, they strike. Caro's breathing was ragged, panic breaking through his bravado. I didn't see it. I didn't bloody see a thing. And still, he broke off, with a grunt of pain. Hale worked quickly, bandaging the wounds, forcing his hands steady. His thoughts, though, churned with dread. The phantom barrage was not harmless. It could wound, and if it could wound, it could kill. When Caro was stable enough to move, they pressed onward, slower now, Caro leaning on his rifle as a crutch. Each step echoed with fear. Hale's mind raced. This was no trick of nerves or echoes of memory. The battlefield itself was fighting them. A blast shook the ground ahead, sending mud and water spraying. When the mist cleared, Hale saw something that turned his stomach to ice. A man lay sprawled in the new crater. British uniform, helmet askew, his body twisted unnaturally, as if frozen mid-scream. Hale rushed forward before instinct could stop him. Caro shouted for him to wait, but he was already sliding into the crater. He crouched over the body, hand reaching to check for life. The corpse's eyes snapped open, mouth stretched wide, but no sound emerged. The figure jerked once, then dissolved into mist, leaving Hale grasping at nothing but empty air. He staggered back, heart pounding, bile rising in his throat. The ground where the body had lain was warm, steaming like fresh blood. Duval stared from above, his voice trembling. They are showing us. Every death, every shell. The land is full of them. Caro hissed between clenched teeth. I didn't sign up to play nursemaid to bloody ghosts. Hale climbed out, face pale but composed, though his eyes betrayed the truth. He was shaken, badly. The phantom barrage started again, rolling like thunder, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Hale knew the pattern too well. Creeping fire designed to drive men from cover, herd them into the open. He'd used the tactic himself. And as the next shell shrieked, he felt it. Not just fear, but recognition. This was his fire plan. He froze, realization chilling his blood. He had drawn maps, ordered barrages on this very sector months before. The guns now fired exactly as he had commanded. Caro shouted something, dragging him back to the present. The explosion shook them off their feet, showering mud. Hale blinked through the haze, disoriented, and then a voice rang out over the thunder. A whisper at first, then louder, rising above the barrage. Clear, commanding, cutting straight into his mind. Edmund Hale. The dead were calling his name. Hale realizes the phantom barrage is following the very fire plan he once ordered, and the ghosts know him by name. The barrage rolled away into silence, leaving the land trembling beneath their boots. The mist hung low, heavy and damp, swallowing the moonlight until the world seemed reduced to shades of gray. Caro leaned heavily on his rifle, breath ragged. Duval's lips moved in prayer. Hale forced himself forward, though each step felt like walking into a grave. The ground shifted underfoot, the unmistakable slope of a trench line. The men descended cautiously, boots scraping wooden duckboards slick with rot. The air here was colder, thick with the stench of damp earth and something worse, the faint, sweet, sour reek of old corpses. Hale lifted his shuttered lantern. Its dim glow revealed sagging sandbags, collapsed timbers, and rusted coils of wire. But as the light swung farther down the trench, he froze. Men. At first he thought they were survivors, soldiers still holding a forgotten line, but then he saw their faces, pale, torn, eyes wide in eternal terror. They crouched at firing steps, clutched rifles with shattered stocks, leaned against trench walls with their intestines spilling into the mud, and yet they moved. A soldier raised a whistle to his lips. Another slung his rifle and clambered up a ladder. A group huddled together, muttering prayers in French. The whistle blew, a shrill, broken sound that echoed endlessly. The men surged forward, climbing over the parapet. Gunfire rattled, invisible yet deafening. The soldiers screamed, fell, and collapsed back into the trench. And then they rose again. The cycle repeated exactly as before. The same whistle, the same scramble, the same deaths. Duvalcet's voice was barely audible. Mon Dieu, they are trapped, reliving their end, again and again. Caro staggered back, his face slick with sweat. That sip's not possible. It sip's not bloody possible. But Hale knew it was. He watched as the soldiers fell once more, saw the blood spray, smelled the gunpowder that should not exist. His mind reeled, memories clashing with the sight before him. He had walked trenches just like these, ordered men to climb ladders and charge into fire. He had heard their screams. Now those screams would never stop. One figure stumbled close, collapsing at Hale's feet. The lantern light revealed a British uniform, mud-caked and blood-soaked. The soldier's face was half gone, but his eyes still moved, locking onto Hale's. Lips bubbled with blood, mouthing words Hale couldn't hear. Then the man rose again, straightening, turning back to the ladder as though rewound by unseen hands. Hale Fett's stomach twisted. They don't set no, they set to dead. Duval nodded grimly. They fight forever because no one released them. The whistle shrilled again. The cycle began anew. This time one of the phantoms paused. He turned his ruined head toward Hale, eyes glimmering in the mist. His jaw worked soundlessly, and then a rasp escaped, not from his mouth, but from the very air. "Sir! Orders, sir!" Hale's breath caught. The ghost was looking at him, waiting, expectant. Caro cursed, grabbing Halesip's sleeve. "We start leaving. Now this isn't set our fight." But the words froze in Hale's throat. For a moment he felt himself back in the war, the weight of command crushing him, men's lives hanging on his orders. "Orders, sir?" The echo burned in his ears. Duval pulled at his arm, breaking the spell. "If you answer them, you will never leave." Hale wrenched his gaze away, forcing himself to move. The three men stumbled down the trench, passing phantom after phantom, each locked in his own endless death. Some prayed, some screamed, some stared blankly into nothing. The air throbbed with despair. Finally, the trench opened into a wide junction. The mist swirled, thicker here, alive, whispers layered on whispers, the chorus of the damned. Hale felt his knees weaken. He wanted to run, but the trench seemed endless, stretching deeper into eternity. Then, ahead, the ground erupted with a phantom blast. Smoke cleared, and there, standing in the crater, was the German officer they had seen before. His cap low, his uniform shredded, but his presence unmistakable. This time, his voice was not faint. It boomed across the trench, guttural and commanding. "Captain Edmund Hale." The phantoms turned as one. Hundreds of ruined faces swung toward Hale, their mouths opening in unison. "Orders, sir." The trench dead break their endless loop and turn to Hale, demanding orders only he can give. The chorus of dead voices faded slowly, like smoke scattering in the wind. When it was gone, the trench was empty again. Only the dripping of water, the creak of rotten boards. Yet Hale could still feel their eyes on him, hundreds of ruined faces waiting for orders. Caro leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "That sips it. We sips seen enough. We siv got proof, too bloody much of it. Let sips go back before the ghosts decide to keep us." But Duval wasn't set listening. His gaze roved the trench, wide and searching. "Did you hear them? The voices? One of them, sounded like..." His breath hitched. "My brother." Hale Sip's chest tightened. He had suspected as much ever since Duval spoke of his missing kin. "No." Duval cut him off, stepping into the gloom. "It was him. I know his voice. I would know it anywhere. His hand clutched his rosary so tightly the beads dug into his flesh. He is here, Captain, among them. Caro swore under his breath. Bloody madness. They all just echoes, lad. Shades. None of them. Duval spun on him, eyes blazing. You don't understand, my brother was only 19. They said he died in the first bombardment. But we never found his body. If he is here, trapped, then I must free him. Hale stepped forward, steady but firm. Henry, listen to me. These aren't set men anymore. They set fragments. Pain burned into the earth. You can reach him. But Duval's face had hardened with something dangerous. Hope sharpened into obsession. If the earth remembers, then it remembers him. I will not leave him to rot in silence. The phantom guns spoke again, distant but steady, the eternal barrage. Duval's head snapped toward the sound, as though pulled by a leash. Without another word, he began to walk toward it, his pace quickening. Caro lurched forward, grabbing his sleeve. Oi! You set not running off alone. Duval wrenched free with surprising strength. Stay if you wish, but I will not abandon my blood. Hale's gut twisted. He had seen this before, soldiers breaking under grief, clinging to impossible salvation. He had buried men who chased ghosts, convinced they could undo death, and yet some part of him understood. If his own brother's voice had called from that trench, would he have resisted? Henry, Hale called. Wait. But Duval was already moving, his figure swallowed by mist. The two remaining men gave chase, stumbling over duckboards, lantern-light bobbing wildly. The trench twisted and shifted, impossible in its length. Whispers rose again, overlapping voices, some German, some French, some British, a cacophony of last words and pleas. At last, Duval stopped. He stood rigid, staring into a dugout partially collapsed by shellfire. Hale's lantern beam caught a figure within, a soldier hunched against the wall, uniform caked with mud, face obscured. Duval's voice cracked. Jean. The figure stirred. Slowly, its ruined face lifted, eyes milky, lips torn. Yet when it spoke, the voice was young, fragile. Henry. Duval fell to his knees, choking back a sob. It's you, mon frère. I've found you. He reached forward, trembling hands outstretched. Hale grabbed his shoulder, pulling him back. Don't touch it. It isn't set him, Henry. It sets only. The phantom spoke again, softer, so cold. I am so cold. Duval's tears streamed freely. He tried to break Hale's grip, desperation in every movement. He's suffering. I must help him. Caro snarled, his voice ragged. That thing isn't set your brother. It sets bait. But Duval was already slipping free, crawling toward the spectre. Hale lunged, but his fingers closed on empty air as Duval entered the dugout. The lantern light flickered, and the figure inside opened its arms. Duval collapsed into the embrace, clutching the ghost as though it were flesh and blood. For a heartbeat, the trench was silent. Then the phantom's mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, and a scream tore through the earth. Hale and Caro staggered back, covering their ears. The dugout shook, timbers splintering, mist poured from the phantom's body, wrapping around Duval, tightening like chains. His cry echoed once, desperate, before the fog swallowed him whole. When it cleared, the dugout was empty. No phantom, no Duval, only silence. Caro lowered his rifle slowly, face ashen. He gone, just bloody gone. Hale's hands shook. He forced them still, but the weight of failure pressed on him like lead. Another man lost, not to shrapnel or bullets, but to grief. And in that silence Hale knew the truth. The battlefield was choosing its prey. Henry vanishes into the arms of a phantom he believes is his brother, leaving Hale and Caro alone, and the battlefield hungrier than ever. The trench shook long after Duval's scream had faded. Hale and Caro stood frozen in the lantern's feeble glow, staring at the collapsed dugout where their companion had vanished. Only silence answered them. Caro broke it first, voice hoarse. "The Sears too we is lost tonight, sir. Him and me arm. If we don't turn back now, we shall be next." Hale's throat worked, but no words came. He should have given the order to retreat. Any sane commander would. Yet something in him knew the choice was already gone. The battlefield was tightening its grip. Then the air split open with thunder. The phantom barrage roared to life all around them, not distant this time but near, deafening, consuming. The scream of shells filled the sky. Explosions tore through the ground in bursts of flame and earth, each one carving fresh craters into the mud. The trench shuddered under the impact, boards snapping, sandbags bursting. Hale dragged Caro down as a blast tore just yards away. Heat washed over them, though no fire burned. Dirt rained in sheets. The acrid stench of cordite stung their throats. "This isn't set shelling," Caro bellowed over the thunder. "It sets the bloody apocalypse." Shapes moved in the smoke, first vague, then sharp, hundreds of soldiers advancing through the barrage, Germans, French, British, all tangled together, their bodies mangled, uniforms scorched. Some staggered with missing limbs, others marched with rifles clutched in skeletal hands. Their mouths gaped open in endless war cries, though no sound emerged. The battlefield was alive again. A bullet whined past Hale's ear, snapping into the trench wall. He jerked back, stunned. The phantom soldiers weren't just visible, they were firing. Caro cursed, fumbling his rifle up. "They can bloody hit us." He fired into the haze, but his bullet vanished into smoke. A figure crumpled, then rose again, hole glowing faintly in its chest. Hale grabbed his shoulder. "Save your ammunition. They set not ours to kill." Caro Sip's face twisted. "Then what the hell are we supposed to do, sir? Just stand here and let Same cut us down?" Another blast answered, rattling their bones. Hale's ears rang, his chest burning from the shockwave. His mind reeled, not just with fear, but recognition. The timing, the arcs, the creeping pattern of fire. He had seen it before. His own fire plan. He had ordered this. Months ago, on a map in a dry command tent, he had drawn the lines that condemned this very stretch of land. The creeping barrage, the rolling thunder, his signature. Now the dead replayed it, over and over, his decisions given form, his guilt echoing across eternity. Caro Sip's eyes were wild. "You knew this was coming, didn't it you?" Hale shook his head, though bile rose in his throat. "Not like this. God help me, not like this." The soldiers surged closer, spilling into the trench. A British phantom clambered over the parapet. Eyes glazed, jaw missing, he lunged toward Hale with bayonet lowered. Hale raised his lantern, and the figure passed through him like smoke, leaving a chill that froze him to the marrow. Caro fired point blank at another phantom. The bullet whined uselessly, but the figure still staggered, as though acknowledging the blow. Then it simply walked on, rifle raised, marching into eternity. The barrage thickened. Shell after shell screamed down, invisible but real, bursting earth and mud. Hale and Caro pressed against the trench wall, trapped as the battle replayed itself in full fury. Screams filled the air, not just phantoms but men's, the cries of the wounded, the sobs of dying boys, voices Hale had heard before in life, and now heard again in death. He covered his ears, but it made no difference. The sound was inside him. Caro grabbed his collar, shaking him. "Sir, we sp've got to move. If we stay, we sp've finished." Hale forced his eyes open, staring at the impossible war raging around them. Smoke, fire, bodies, his choices given form, dragging them both into oblivion. And through it all, above the thunder, a voice boomed, clear, cold, commanding. "Edmund Hale." The German officer stood atop the parapet, untouched by fire, his ruined face lit by phantom flashes. His arm rose, pointing down at Hale like a judge at sentencing. The barrage stopped. Utter silence fell. Every phantom soldier froze mid-step, rifles raised, eyes turned toward the captain. Hale felt the weight of 1,000 stares. His breath rasped in his throat. They were waiting. The Phantom Army halts mid-battle, turning their gaze to Hale as the German officer calls his name, demanding something only he can give. The world stood frozen. Smoke hung still in the air, flames locked in place, phantom soldiers rigid as statues. Only the German officer moved, his ruined face lit by an unearthly glow. His arm remained raised, finger pointing directly at Hale. "Edmund Hale," the voice boomed, reverberating through bone and earth. "Answer." Caro clutched his rifle, eyes darting from phantom to phantom. "They stir waiting for you, sir. Christ Almighty. They stir waiting for you." Hale's breath came in ragged bursts. His instinct screamed to deny it, to shout back that he was just a man, that he owed nothing to these shades. But deep inside, he knew the truth. They weren't calling for any soldier. They were calling for the one who had given the orders. The mist shifted. Figures emerged, different from the soldiers, smaller, frailer, women in tattered dresses, children with hollow eyes. Their forms wavered, but their faces burned into Hale's memory with terrible clarity. The village. He staggered back, bile rising. He had never seen them in person, only their rooftops burning from afar, through the haze of bombardment. He had ordered fire on that village when German artillery was spotted nearby. The report later said civilians had still been there, hiding in cellars, dozens dead, maybe hundreds. He had buried that memory beneath duty, telling himself it was war, it was necessary, it was beyond his control. But here they were, rising from the soil, proof that the earth had remembered what he had tried to forget. A little girl stepped forward, clutching a ragged doll with one arm. The other hung limp, broken. She tilted her head, eyes fixed on him. "You killed us," she whispered. The words struck harder than any shell. Hale Sip's knees gave way, dropping him into the mud. "No," he rasped. "I didn't set know you were there. I didn't set." Another figure stepped forward. A woman, her face streaked with soot, clutching a baby limp in her arms. Her voice was a hollow echo. "You gave the order." Caro grabbed Hale Sip's shoulder, shaking him violently. "Don't sit. Listen. They sip not real, they sip tricks, sir." His voice cracked with desperation. "We can still get out." But Hale couldn't pull his eyes away. Every face in the mist was one he had condemned. Not men with rifles, not enemy soldiers, innocents, and all of them were staring at him now, their mouths opening in unison. The sound that came out was not a scream but a roar, the roar of artillery. The phantom guns spoke again, their thunder rolling from the throats of the dead. Hale clutched his head, agony lancing through him. His own voice echoed back, memories twisting into accusation. Fire for effect, level the village. No survivors. He remembered giving the order. Clear, calm, precise. Believing it was necessary, believing he was doing his duty. But the faces before him told the truth. It had been murder, wrapped in the language of war. The German officer descended from the parapet, boots leaving no mark in the mud. He approached with deliberate steps, his hollow eyes never leaving Hale. "You killed them," the officer intoned. "And still you live." Hale trembled, mud soaking his knees, guilt crushing him like lead. "I didn't set want this," he whispered. "God help me, I didn't set want this." The officer stopped before him, towering, a figure carved of smoke and ruin. Slowly, he extended his ruined hand, palm upward. "Then give the order, and join us." Caro raised his rifle, shouting, though his voice was drowned by fear. "Don't sit. Listen, Captain. Don't sit you dare." But Hale's eyes locked on the hand before him. Around them the battlefield waited, thousands of dead soldiers and civilians staring, frozen, hungry. The silence pressed in, suffocating. His lips trembled. For a moment he felt the weight of command again, the terrible, familiar pull of men waiting for orders. His orders. "I cannot." The words tore from him like blood from a wound. "I cannot give it again." The officer's hollow face twisted into something darker than rage, disappointment. The phantom guns answered. They erupted all at once, deafening, apocalyptic. The ground heaved, timbers snapped, craters burst open like wounds. Hale and Caro were hurled against the trench wall, choking on smoke and mud. The dead no longer waited. They surged forward, bayonets fixed, mouths open in a chorus of war cries. And through it all, Hale heard one voice above the rest, a child Sip's whisper, soft but clear. "You will never be free." Hale is confronted by the civilians his orders killed, and the phantom officer demands he join the dead. Hale refuses, and the battlefield erupts into chaos, the dead advancing on them. The trench dissolved into bedlam. Phantom soldiers surged over the parapet, their forms glowing faintly in the smoke. Bayonets flashed, rifles cracked, and the air filled with screams, not only echoes but real enough to shatter the men's nerves. Hale staggered to his feet, dragging Caro up with him. "Move," he shouted, his voice raw. "We have to move." But Caro wasn't listening. His eyes were wide, wild, darting from one phantom to the next. His breathing came in ragged gasps, lips pulled back in a snarl. "They set her everywhere," he muttered, gripping his rifle like a lifeline. "Bloody everywhere. Coming for us, for me. I once die here. Not like my brothers, not nameless in the mud." Hale seized his arm, trying to steady him. "Caro, look at me. They can take you if you keep your head." The sergeant wrenched free, teeth bared. "Keep my head? You don't stit hear them, sir? You don't stit see them? Every bloody face, every lad I lost, staring at me." He swung his rifle up and fired into the smoke. The shot cracked, echoing across the trench. A phantom staggered, then simply reformed, marching on. Caro screamed in rage, firing again and again, each bullet disappearing into mist. "Stop!" Hale barked. "You sit there wasting ammunition." But Caro was deaf to him now. He spun, firing wildly into the shadows, into the trench walls, into the nothingness. His voice rose in a manic cry. "Come on then, all of you. You once that have me." Phantoms surged closer, their bayonets lowering, their mouths gaping in silent howls. Caro roared back, charging at them with his bayonet fixed. He plunged into the smoke, stabbing, slashing, striking at ghosts that gave no ground. Hale followed, desperate. "Caro, pull back." But the sergeant was beyond reach. His face twisted in fury and terror. He slashed at a phantom German, blade passing through like water. In return, the phantom thrust, and though no steel was visible, blood welled suddenly from Caro's chest. He cried out, stumbling, yet even wounded he fought on, swinging his rifle butt with savage desperation. Hale grabbed him, trying to drag him back. "You still kill yourself." Caro Sip's eyes rolled toward him, burning with a terrible light. "Better me than them. Better me than nameless." Another phantom thrust. Another wound bloomed on Caro's side. His knees buckled, yet he laughed. A wild, broken laugh that chilled Hale's blood. "You see, sir? They want me. They want us all. We shall never leave." Then, with a final scream, Caro hurled himself into the densest knot of phantoms. For a moment, his form vanished in the writhing smoke, swallowed whole by the dead. Hale lunged forward, shouting his name, but it was useless. The mist parted, and Caro was gone. No body, no sound, only silence. Hale staggered back, chest heaving. First Duval, now Caro. The battlefield was stripping them away one by one, devouring them whole, and he knew with cold certainty that it would not stop until it claimed him too. The barrage rolled again, shaking the trench. Hale stumbled against the wall, lantern slipping from his grasp. Its light flickered, dimmed, then died, plunging him into darkness. In that darkness, whispers coiled, familiar voices, Caro's laugh, broken and bitter, Duval's desperate prayer, the little girl's accusation. "You killed us." Hale pressed his hands to his ears, but it was no use. The voices were inside him now. Then, above them all, came the German officer's command, echoing across the void. "Captain Hale, the guns await your order." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the barrage ceased. The phantoms froze, waiting. And in that stillness, Hale realized the truth. The battlefield would not let him go. The dead had chosen him as their commander. Unless he chose differently. Caro vanishes into the phantoms after a violent breakdown, leaving Hale utterly alone. The guns fall silent, waiting for his next command. The trench ended in a wall of collapsed earth, but Hale knew it wasn't the end. The barrage had gone silent, and the silence felt deliberate, like the battlefield itself was holding its breath. Lantern gone, he lit a flare, its red glow staining the mud like fresh blood. The ground shook beneath him, a steady rhythm, not explosions this time, but a pounding, mechanical beat. Hale recognized it instantly, the cadence of heavy artillery being fired in sequence. He followed the sound, each step dragging him deeper into the earth's bowels. A half-buried tunnel yawned open ahead, timbers warped and blackened. The pounding grew louder within, each thud vibrating through his ribs. Hale ducked inside. The tunnel sloped downward, walls dripping with moisture. Air thick with the stink of oil and sweat pressed against him. His boots slipped on duckboards slick with slime. Yet there was something else in the air, something older, the scent of gunpowder, layered with decay, as though time itself had rotted here. At the end of the tunnel, the chamber opened wide. Hale froze. It was an artillery pit, vast, echoing, lined with massive guns embedded in the earth, except they were not made of steel. They were bones, cannons wrought from the fused remains of men, spines forming barrels, rib cages as carriages, skulls packed tight like gears, and they fired. Spectral crews swarmed around them, uniforms shredded, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. German, French, British, enemies in life, united in death. Their motions were precise, mechanical. One crew rammed a glowing shell into a cannon of bone. Another pulled a lever made of vertebrae. The ground shook as the weapon fired, though no shell flew. Hale staggered forward, horrified, unable to look away. The sight was obscene and awe-inspiring, a grotesque cathedral of war. Then he realized every crew paused as he entered. Hundreds of eyes, milky and ruined, turned to him in unison. The German officer stood at the center of the pit, his ruined face illuminated by the glow of spectral flames. His voice boomed, echoing off the chamber walls. "The guns are yours, Captain Hale." Hale shook his head violently. "No, I won't sit. I refuse." The officer raised his hand. The crews froze, waiting. The silence was suffocating. Hale could feel their hunger pressing against him. Thousands of souls desperate for command. "You gave the orders in life," the officer intoned. "You killed men, women, children. You unleashed fire without mercy. You will do so again. Forever." Hale's knees buckled. He fell into the mud, hands shaking. "I was only doing my duty. I was serving my country." The officer's ruined mouth twisted into something like a smile. "And so you shall serve still." The phantoms murmured, a chorus rising, echoing his name. "Hale, Hale, Hale." He pressed his hands to his ears, but the voices filled him. Memories burned through his mind. The maps, the fire plans, the signatures on orders that killed thousands. He had told himself it was war, that he was blameless, but the battlefield had remembered everything. The officer stepped closer, extending his skeletal hand. "Give the order, join us, and the guns will never fall silent." Hale's chest heaved. His whole life had been spent commanding, giving orders without question. Now, with eternity waiting, he faced the final one. A flare sputtered in his hand, its red glow fading. In that dying light, he looked around the chamber, at the crews waiting, at the guns made of bones and sorrow, at the weight of his own guilt, reflected in 1,000 ruined faces. For the first time in years, Captain Edmund Hale felt truly powerless. He whispered, barely audible, "God forgive me." The officer's hand remained outstretched, steady, unyielding, and Hale, trembling, began to rise. Hale stands in the pit of bone-forged guns, faced with the decision to command the dead artillery crews, or be destroyed by them. The red flare died in Hale's hand, plunging the chamber into gloom. Only the spectral glow of the bone-forged guns remained, flickering like the embers of some eternal fire. The crews stood frozen, hundreds of ruined faces locked on him, every eye hollow, every hand waiting. Hal felt the weight of their stare, pressing him down, pinning him like a condemned man before a tribunal. The German officer's voice rumbled through the chamber. You were a commander in life. Be a commander in death. Take your place. Give the order. Hale Furt's lips trembled. No more. I've given enough orders. I've killed enough. The officer stepped closer, skeletal hand extended. Then why are the guns still firing? Because you have not finished. Because your voice is missing. Join us, and the earth will finally rest. The words cut deep. Could it be true? Could ending his life among them finally silence the phantom barrage? Or was this another lie? Another trick of the battlefield to claim him? He closed his eyes, and memories surged. The village burning under his command. Duval's face as he chased his brother's ghost. Caro's laughter as he vanished into the phantoms. The voices of the dead children, accusing, relentless. It was all his fault. His voice cracked. If I give the order, it must be the last. The officer inclined his head. So be it. Hale staggered forward, legs trembling. The crews parted for him, spectral soldiers stepping aside, their hollow eyes never leaving him. He mounted the firing step, boots sinking into mud that had no end. The German officer loomed at his side, a shadow of command, terrible and eternal. Before him the guns waited, each barrel a grotesque fusion of bone and iron, each breech glowing faintly. Their crews stood rigid, frozen mid-drill, waiting for the voice that would set them in motion. Hale drew a ragged breath. He had given so many orders in his life, each one calculated, precise, detached. But this one was different. This one would cost everything. He straightened, shoulders squaring, voice breaking but steady. Ceasefire. The words echoed, not just in his throat, but through the chamber itself, carried on air that was not air, reverberating through bone and mud. The spectral crews shuddered, their hands lowering. The cannons of bone groaned, timbers cracking, as though the order itself was a weight crushing them. For the first time the battlefield fell silent. No phantom barrages, no thunder, no whispers, only silence. The officer turned to him, eyes unreadable. A commander must stand with his men. Hale knew what came next. He looked once more at the chamber, at the soldiers who would never leave, at the guns that had stolen every life and memory. His voice was a whisper, meant for no one but himself. I will not abandon you. He stepped into the gun pit. The mud rose to his knees, then to his waist, cold and clinging. Hands, skeletal, spectral, reached out, pulling him gently but firmly down. He did not fight. For the first time, he did not fight. Caro's laughter echoed faintly. Duval's prayers whispered, the children's voices softened. Hale felt the battlefield closing around him, embracing him, claiming him. His body sank into the pit, but his voice rose above, carried into eternity. Cease fire. The last of his breath left him, and the chamber exhaled. The guns groaned, splintered, and fell silent. The phantoms bowed their heads. The earth trembled once, then stilled. Hale was gone. The German officer turned, his ruined face unreadable. Slowly, he raised his arm in salute. Around the chamber the phantoms followed suit, thousands of spectral soldiers saluting the man who had joined them. Then the officer spoke, voice low, almost reverent. The order is given. Hale sinks into the gun pit, sacrificing himself as commander of the dead. For the first time, the phantom guns fall silent, but the silence feels too fragile to last. Dawn crept slowly over the horizon, bleeding pale light across the shattered fields. For the first time in living memory, the land was silent. No thunder of guns, no screaming shells, no phantom barrages echoing through the mist. A strange peace settled, fragile and alien. The battlefield looked like any other scarred wasteland, pitted with craters, littered with rusted wire, skeletal trees reaching upward like burned-out candles. Only one man remained to witness it: Sergeant Thomas Carow. He staggered through the trenches, filthy and half-mad, eyes wide and hollow. His wounds burned, but it was not blood that had broken him. It was the silence, the impossible, unnatural silence. "Hale," he croaked, voice shredded. "Captain." Only the wind answered, rustling through dead grass. Carow dragged himself to the surface, boots slipping in the muck. From the ridge he looked out across no man's land. The mist was thinning, retreating like a tide. And for the first time, he saw it clearly. The battlefield was filled with figures, thousands of spectral soldiers standing at ease, weapons lowered, their heads bowed, as though in mourning. At their center, where the earth had cracked open, the bone-forged guns lay shattered, broken into fragments, and Captain Edmund Hale was nowhere to be seen. Carow fell to his knees, trembling. He wanted to curse, to cry, to scream at the world for taking another man, another commander, another brother, but no words came, only tears, hot and bitter, streaking the mud on his face. For a moment, he thought the nightmare had ended, that maybe, just maybe, the sacrifice had worked. Then he heard it. A distant rumble, soft at first, like thunder rolling beyond the horizon, then sharper, clearer, the scream of artillery shells tearing through the morning sky. Carow froze. His chest heaved, breath shallow. No, it's done. He stopped it. But the sound grew louder. He turned, eyes wide, searching the horizon, and there, miles away, the smoke rose. Phantom flashes lit the distance. The guns were firing again. Not here. Somewhere else. Another battlefield. Another commander. Carow collapsed forward, fists pounding the earth. His sobs mixed with laughter, broken and despairing. Hale's sacrifice had silenced this place, but the war had scarred too much ground, spilled too much blood. The earth would never be quiet. The phantom guns would never truly fall silent. Behind him, a whisper drifted through the mist, a voice he knew too well, calm and commanding. Sergeant Carow. He spun, heart lurching, and there at the edge of the trench stood Captain Edmund Hale. His uniform was clean, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He raised a hand, not in greeting, but in command. "Fall in." Carow's breath caught. His rifle slipped from his grasp. For a moment he wanted to run, to throw himself into the mud and vanish, but his boots moved on their own, carrying him forward toward the waiting dead. The mist swallowed them both, and when the sun finally broke over the ridge, the battlefield was empty, silent, waiting. This was the phantom guns that never fell silent. If it kept you through the night, subscribe and like, it truly helps. We bring you terrifying stories of war, horror, and the supernatural every evening, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. What would you do if the guns called your name? Tell me below, or just comment "Seize fire" if you made it to the end. Thank you.